works. I open the monitoring in another page. Okay, I open the staging. Okay, so this is the application that I'm going to test. And
how did you point the Loadtest to the endpoint?
From the environment variable is defined here. So I have sorry, the URL, I get it from the auto DevOps. Here I define the client and the duration of the test, and I get the environment variable URL environment from the pipeline.
Mm. So out of the box. So for us to use this, we need to take this project, and I mean, we have an app. We have a simple app, the Tanuki app.
Yeah.
So we simply need to take to add the stage for load testing, and we need to take this.
Exactly. As you can see here, I'm going to use the environment URL to fill this variable.
Okay.
And we can obviously define a default value for load test client and load test duration.
We can hard code it. That's what you see, right?
Yeah. You define a default, and if the user wants to customize, have the variable. If not, we have a default access. So. Which is your username?
Second one.
Okay.
Yeah, second one.
Okay. So. This is the old pipeline. I'm just going to give a look at the URL. Okay, the staging is still not existing, waiting for the deployment.
Can you look at the project files?
Yeah, sure.
So
I just
so
take
the
it
locust Python is the one that we should take the entire project, right? And you added just the pipe.
This file is including the configuration for the test. In this case, I'm just getting the index page.
Okay.
If I go to the LocustIO page, basically Locust is getting this file, and you are able to define a specific set of action. For instance, in this instance, I make a login using a username and password. I ask the index and the about page. So you can define the diverse page and diverse action that you want to do. For instance, you can make a post or everything else. And this is what you're getting in the end. You're getting all the tests, the number of slave, the users that you are trying to replicate, and the RPS are the reply per second. That is basically your score. More you get an high value, and more your platform is responsible. And you can trace obviously the failure and everything, and you can export the data. So for instance, if I remember well, it's possible to export this as JSON, and we could include this, for instance, in our merge request or in a dedicated graph or dashboard. Okay, we have our build. And we should have now our staging. Yes, it is. And this is my staging application, is creating the certificates. Okay, so my staging application now it's working. And from the metrics, I will start in a few minutes to see the metrics from this environment too. Now, looking at the pipeline, I have the load test. So, no, sorry, this is the old one. Okay, so giving a look to the log, the load test is loaded. He's getting the URL from the environment. And here you can see all the requests with the score that we are getting. So is that so good for debug because it's verbose enough to understand what is happening to your environment. Mm-hmm. And this will continue for 2 minutes, actually, because I set it up 120 seconds. Mm-hmm. And if I give a look to the metrics, as you can see, I can start to trace the usage. We still have to wait for a while.
Interesting. Can you go for the logs for a second, just to see what you are seeing in the logs? No, in the logs of the go back.
Yeah. Sorry.
So underneath the operation type on your left side.
Sorry. Yeah,
logs,
sorry.
Yeah. I just want to see if there is something.
Yeah. As you can see the HTTP request made from the locus side. This is the first request for the certificate, and then you have just the HTTP plain request.
Okay.
That's me, and the rest is all the locus client. Okay, as you can see, there is the load that now is stable because I'm keeping the same amount of requests.
Mm-hmm.
This is
after 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, you'll see it decline.
Yeah. Okay. Now, for instance, it got an error. Max retry exceeded, so there has been some failure. The point could be that at the beginning, the Ingress certificate was under creation. So we have to deal with the first creation of certificate for the environment, or to keep the staging in plane. This is something that we have to define. If I'm going to run again the test, we have less error. But the point is that we collected anyway the relevant metrics. So for instance, regarding this period, I know that I received this amount of requests with the average and the maximum time. So I know that, for instance, my application is able to reach 12 requests by second. In this case, what I can do is to go to my application in the staging environment. Actually, my application is just one node. I can, for instance, scale to 3 nodes and do the same test again.
And then the throughput should go down, right?
Yeah. And so now I don't have anymore the problem regarding the Ingress certificate, because it's still there, it's not renewed. And I can see the difference to understand how much the vertical or the horizontal scaling, for instance, is impacting my application. I could deal with the resources assigned to the Docker. I could deal with the number of pods, or everything related to the logic inside the application. For instance, in a complex environment, I could try to scale differently front end or back end or the database engine.
This is cool.
Sorry.
Very useful.
Thanks. As you can see, the Locust client started to make the request, and in the request by second column, you can see that it's trying to go fast and fast, and we will reach at one point the maximum target. The only limitation in this case is that to have a real test, I should scale out also the Locust. And this is something that we need to work on it, because from the pipeline, using just as a Docker job is not easy, because usually the Docker master and the Docker slave are two different kind of Docker image with two different kind of configuration. Locust is providing an M chart. So for instance, we could manage this by Helm, but we need to understand how to integrate this if we want to scale up the testing engine.
Yeah. If you want like multiple users hitting your endpoint multiple times, rather than single user that is hitting your environment multiple times. Yeah, I think for us, for our purpose, it's enough. We just want to create a load. We're not really creating a real test on the environment. We just want to see how we can stress the environment and make sure that this metrics will spike.
Yeah, for my experience, my use case, cloud provider, it wasn't interesting to create the whole amount of the user base, also because it was impossible. It was more important to understand. I use in production 60 pods, 100 pods. On 10 pods, how many load I can push there? And I make, a ratio between the two different environments. Or just, now I have this performance. If I change this piece of my application, this is impacting my performance. So for my experience, it's not so important to have a large number of slaves for Locust. We can also deliver an MVC with just one node, as I made this in this case. It's totally different from the purpose of the test. So now the job is succeeded. I didn't get any error as expected, because the endpoint was already there. And if I look at the environment matrix, I can see the difference between the two different situations. So in this case, for instance, I can see that the number of total memory obviously is increased, but the memory by pod is decreased. And if I go to look at the, maybe I can give more.
3 hours.
Yeah. Okay. If I look at the ingress, for instance, I can see that here, this is really interesting. I know where I make the change, and this is really important in this case. So I can see that I have some difference, but it's not changing so much the answer. So in this case, I can understand that I don't have the pod in sufferance so much as with just one node. Yeah. So probably if I want to stress more the pod, in this case, I need more slave clients. But it's something that we have to test case by case. There is not just one answer. Also because actually I asked to get a blank page. So there is no load inside the pod. It's just a really blank page. But if you think to a complex application, obviously the tests have to be made of something that is involving the computing part.
What if I want to break the app? If I want to create can I create the amount of load that eventually will?
Yeah, but I need slave with just one pod. I think it is not. Yeah.
Okay.
What we could do to have a simplex situation, instead of having one center master with all the slave, is to just replicate the single node. I'm not going to have a unique dashboard inside Locust, but from the metric side that I'm collecting, I'm going to have everything. So for instance, what I could try is yeah, we need to define the number of the replica for the Locust Docker image.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So as mentioned, I think that obviously to deliver this, we need to spend some time adjusting something. But I think that it's an integration that we could achieve with not so much effort.
Yeah. I think for now we can first work on what you just show us, and if we will see that we'll need probably, as you mentioned, to add more replicas to Locust, so we be able to create more stress to break the app. We'll do it. Maybe we don't need to, because probably have a different way to doing what we want to do, and this can help us just to spike on the metric, make sure that metrics are spiked.
Yeah, I totally agree. Another approach that we could use, but for the future, I really trust MVC, especially in this kind of case, is to deploy Locust with the number of slaves that we need from the GitLab managed app using Helm. And we could try to use the Locust API from the diverse job to commit, the job to the Locust installation. This could be another approach.
So you'll create more instances of Locust?
No, just we can try to create a central instance from the GitLab managed apps, and when your pipeline is running, it's just triggering the main instance. In this case, probably we are able to manage better the number of slave and everything related.
Cool. Well, thank you. I have an outbreak in like 4 minutes. So I'll drop. But thanks for showing us this demo. It's something we will take into consideration while we're trying to build our environment, trying to create basically a demo environment so our users can simulate some sort of problem so the user can go through multiple steps and try to find what's the problem. So it involves multiple parts. One of them is spiking the metrics, and definitely something we can try. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I will share the recording with the monitor team, maybe in case anyone finds it useful.
You're welcome. Thanks to you. I gave you the maintainer access to the project, so you can do everything. And just let me know in case. Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.